How's it going, everybody? This is CT with my Georgia South Carolina recap. And Cocky has risen from the dead. No, they weren't actually dead. Uh, South Carolina really has two key factors to think for this game that they can. Um, it's Dylan Thompson, who absolutely played phenomenal. Didn't play all that well against A&M, but really played big today. I think we all knew he was capable of, because he's came in for games over the past couple of years and played really big, but he proved it again today. And Hudson Mason played decently, but Dylan Thompson completely outplayed him. And the other thing is that atmosphere in Williams-Brice was just electric. One of the best I've seen, maybe the best atmosphere I've seen all year, and one of the best crowds I saw in Williams-Brice. I wasn't there, so I can't completely know, but from watching on TV, that's one of the best crowds I've seen at Williams-Brice. They were really behind the team the whole way, and you could just feel how they wanted to turn that season around after that embarrassing loss to A&M in the opener. But they came out on the first drive, took the ball down the field, touchdown, hit the tight end or whoever it was over the middle a few times, I remember. And then Georgia came out and scored, I think, two plays. And it was looking like, my God, South Carolina's defense is just, God, they're so bad. What happened? They've been so good over the past few years, but they got enough stops. The defense did not play good in this game. There was a couple of big plays that Georgia hit on them that got called back. I remember one play, Gurley just hit the hole, breaks it to the outside. That seems to be what Gurley does every single time. My friend pointed that out while we were watching the game, and I thought about it. I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. Like, if you think about it, Gurley's like what he does is like so predictable. You know what I mean? Like he hits the hole hard with downhill speed and power, and he's gonna break it out. That's what he does every single time. But anyways, I thought that was kind of a questionable call, kind of a ticky tack holding call. But it is what it is. I'm not taking anything away from South Carolina. Um, what else was there? Oh yeah, that gutsy fourth down call that Spurrier made. Love to see Spurrier take chances. You know, I kind of he kind of seems a little bit more conservative in big games over the past year or so, but he showed up this game, and it was that quarterback sneak that Dylan Thompson did that you could argue that he did not get. It's just really hard to tell. On those sneaks, it's just piled up the middle. There's so many guys in there, so many bodies. It's really hard to tell if he got it or not. Um, and I loved how the line judge at the bottom of the field ran in there like he immediately knew that where the spot was. He couldn't see shit. I mean, it was so obvious, but he came in there very assertively. Um, what else was there in this game? Gurley, they came out. South Carolina defense determined to stop Gurley, and then they hit him on a couple of passes and scored that touchdown. But they did enough to stop Gurley more times than not. Um, he had a couple big plays on him, like I said, but for the most part, they did a pretty good job containing him. He wasn't. If they lost the game, which they almost did, Dylan Thompson, as well as he played, threw that pick, which could have changed the game there at the end, but luckily it didn't. And I believe they threw a pass on, was it third down? They probably should have ran it with Gurley. I think it was on that same drive that they got that pick, or that drive after they got the pick. And yeah, that was probably a mistake. But Mike Bobo is overall a good offensive coordinator, so you can't fault him too much. Um, but yeah, Dylan Thompson could have cost them the game there, but didn't. But overall, they did a pretty good job of containing Gurley. You had to know if you were Georgia coming into this game that they were going to really focus in on Todd Gurley and try to make Hudson Mason beat them. Without those two receivers they had missing, and that's kind of what they did. But I think they kind of loosened up a bit after that first drive. But then, overall, still wanted to make sure that Todd Gurley wasn't the one that beat them in this game. And they did a good job of that, even though they still gave up, was it 35 points? 35, 38, I believe was the final. Um, but yeah, you really got to hand it to Dylan Thompson in that atmosphere. Man, very, very impressive. And we'll see where this goes for South Carolina. They're not out of anything now. I mean, this game was a must win for South Carolina. Let's make that clear right now. They had to win this game to save this season. They were not going to have a good season if they lost this game overall. And now they're in the hunt for the SEC East. They're not out of anything. Let's get that clear right now. South Carolina is not out of the SEC East title picture, the for the playoff picture. They're in the picture of all that. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but they're in the hunt. They really have not that many more tough games. They gotta go to Auburn, which is going to be very tough, and Florida. We just saw won a triple overtime against Kentucky, and those teams really looked pretty damn even. So I guess you could say those are equally tough games. Going to Kentucky is probably going to be a trap game for South Carolina, very dangerous. And I'm not sure. I think they play. Do they play at Florida? I want to say they play at Florida, so that'll be another tricky game. Sprayer going back to the swamp is always such. But yeah, South Carolina pulls out a close victory at home against Georgia to save the season, and we'll see where this goes for both teams. Let me talk about Georgia for a second. Uh, I kind of knew this was going to be a tough game, but I thought Georgia would pull it out. I was wrong. They were very close, and Georgia's kind of the same position as South Carolina. They're going to need South Carolina to lose again if in a conference game if they want to get back into the SEC title picture. So they're really, I think Auburn is the main one that they're going to look at and say, Auburn will take care of South Carolina, and we get back into the mix of things because I don't think Georgia has many tough games left on the schedule. Well, they got to play Auburn at home, which is a big difference than what South Carolina has to go to Auburn. So if they can take care of business there, you know, and they got to play Florida in Jacksonville, which I would assume. Right now, Georgia will be easily the favorite in that game. So they're right there too. The East is wide open, as is the West. So, but the story of the day, biggest win of the day, probably in college football, was South Carolina. They saved the season. They're back in the mix of things, and we'll see where this goes. This is CT. Thanks for watching.